Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Writing and Narrative Design panel of SGDA's 2022 Summit. The speakers that have kindly put aside time to answer our questions today are Isa Party, Deandra Losrado, and Liz Moberly. I am Nicolette Bond, the founder of Irvine Valley College's Game Development Club, and I'll be moderating this panel today. I'll be asking a series of prepared questions for the first 30 minutes, and feel free to pitch in, you guys, if you have an answer or would like to add on to what someone else says. And the last 20 minutes will be used for audience questions or more of my own, depending on how many audience questions we get in Discord or on Twitch. Would you be able to introduce yourselves with your name, pronouns, narrative design experience, and anything else you would like us to know to start off? Maybe Liz to start? Liz, sorry.
It's all right. It's nice to meet the people here and to speak with everyone today. My name is Liz, and I have worked in games on and off for several years, but working specifically in narrative has been the last few. I've worked with places like Warner Brothers. I currently work with Obsidian Entertainment as a narrative designer. I've worked in a collection of indie experiences as well, the most recent of which is the forthcoming Curse to Golf, which comes out later this year. We went back, and I'm currently working on a CCG called Singularity that I'm excited for. So it's nice to meet y'all.
Maybe Isa, would you like to go next? You guys can just like go one after another if you'd like.
Sure. It's wonderful to meet everybody. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Isa Party. I am a game writer, narrative designer, and now editor at Storyloom. I think my background is mirrored, so I think it looks like Mooly Rots right now instead of Storyloom. But my narrative design experience is I started making games in college at Ringling College of Art and Design. I fell in love with writing games and working with people collaboratively during a game jam, and I haven't really stopped since. My pronouns are they, them. And I've also worked in a bunch of different indie projects, and this is working with Pixelberry is my first like kind of soiree into working at a bigger studio.
All right, my name is Deandra Losrado, and my pronouns are she and they. And I've been working in the industry for about 14 years now. I got my start over at BioWare. I've worked at places like Riot, Carbine Studios, Aniplex, Activision. I'm currently at Blizzard as a senior narrative designer on World of Warcraft. And I've always kind of been in narrative, even though I wasn't specifically a narrative designer. So I've done pretty much everything that's adjacent to it: editing, localization, all the fun bits.
All right. Now that we've done our intros, I'll ask the first question. So narrative design has a lot of meanings for a lot of people, ranging from writing dialogue and characters to advocating for the story, and sometimes even level design. How would you describe what you do as writers and narrative designers in regards to both your current job and general experience? Whoever wants.
I can go first. So personally, and this is only in my view, is I don't really see that much of a difference between a narrative designer and a writer, because you're creating stories. That's what you're doing, right? Both disciplines create stories. Currently, right now, I work with quest design really closely in order to make a really cool interactive experience. And, you know, it's very much a really collaborative effort. I'm trying to protect you all from cat butt. I forgot to introduce, she's mad because I forgot to introduce Lyra. She's also a very important part of the narrative design process. That's kind of my take on that. Yeah, narrative is collaboration, but like all of good storytelling is, to make sure that you have really good diverse perspectives.
I think in my experience, it's like every project and every place I've worked is kind of describes it really differently. Sometimes it's like, narrative designers are writers. Narrative designers tell writers what to do. Writers tell narrative designers what to do. It's like so all over the place sometimes, and it really is kind of just dependent on what studio you're working at, or what project you're working, or how you define it yourself. Kind of what I do is like I herd a bunch of writers together, and I help them figure out how their choices affect the story, as well as like are there branches veering into being too branchy and too unmanageable, or should we bring the scope down, or should we make these choices feel more interactive and feel more in line with the character? And some people would say that that's what a narrative designer does, and other people say that it wouldn't be. So it's kind of all over the place, and I don't really think there's one set definition. But I kind of agree with Deandra that they're very, game writing and narrative design is so similar and oftentimes interchangeable with each other.
Yeah, I echo what the other panelists are saying. I would say that in my experience, every studio I go to has similarities and differences depending on studio pipelines, culture, all sorts of things, the tradition. And I also think it actually also depends on the types of games you're making. Not every game is asking for the same sets of considerations. There's patterns. There's definitely some base knowledge that's happening across all of them. But, what I'm going to do on one game, that's a completely different story and game genre than another project is going to mean that I might have to shift the definition of even what I do. You could have two different narrative designers who on paper are doing the same thing, but their responsibilities look wildly different depending on what project they're on, even sometimes within the same studio. I have seen that happen. So I think that it's really uncomfortable. I think I feel like this question about what is the difference between writing and narrative design comes up every couple of months somewhere on the internet. And I think it's a valid question, but one that unfortunately is a little bit putty at the moment. And it really depends based on your experience and who you're collaborating with.
Actually, related to that, since different companies, like you mentioned, and honestly, within the same company sometimes, require different skill sets for narrative designers, is there a right way to prepare for the career or something that you would recommend as a path for us as students?
I would say that if you want to be a narrative, again, to me, I always take it to the baseline of storytelling. Just prepare yourself by loving stories. Like, be really interested in learning new things, learning new cultures, because stories come from everywhere. We are made of stories. So if you're really invested in like movies, you don't necessarily, I'm not saying like you have to read all the books in the world, but just, movies, theater, again, books. But if you're interested even like people watching, sometimes you'll see people go down the street and you make up little stories in your mind, or you'll overhear a snippet of conversation. Just file that away as all the human interactions you see day to day. And to me, that's kind of what prepares you, being interested in how those things come about, why they come about, and then using that as maybe inspiration to execute on your own stuff. And also, just writing, just making stories of your own, and doesn't even have to be writing, designing, make a game that tells a story without words. That's all completely valid. And that's kind of the things that I look for when I'm looking at student portfolios and whatnot.
Yeah, bouncing off that, like, honestly, storytelling isn't everything, like from music to acting to film to TV to comics. So like really dig into what you love, and also don't be afraid to try something new. But like for me, it's like I kind of got into game writing through comics writing and short story writing and prose. And I just started thinking like, well, I could just turn this story into a game and it could be interactive, and that could make it like add so much more depth to it. And obviously some games don't work as books, and some books don't work as games, and vice versa. But I think just like thinking about like story as something that comes from you and things that you love really helps me, like even when I'm stuck and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to code. It like helps me remember that at the base, it is about story and sharing experiences and making an adventure.
Just to make sure that I understood your question, Nicolette, basically, is there a baseline thing you need in order to do this job is pretty much what you were wondering?
Yeah, it's something related to that, but a lot of us are pursuing degrees right now, and also doing game jams as well. But we're just like probably wondering if there's a specific degree that would be recommended, or a specific like type of story that we should be writing,
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I fully understand where the angle of the question was coming from. I do echo that I think at the end of the day, if you want to work in game writing and narrative design, your story fundamentals do need to be there, and they should come from a diverse set of places and experiences. I mean, I'm sure someone out there is going to disagree with me, but I don't want to hear the same story like told 1,000 different ways over and over and over, even though there are certain patterns, of course, I enjoy or engage in. But you know, there is something to be said for patience and practice and thoughtful approach to storytelling when you come to this discipline. As far as like, is there and I hope I don't diminish it, there's no like silver bullet or golden ticket of like, if I do all of these things, then I will get this said result with this said job. And this is like the one way in. That doesn't exist in our industry yet, as far as I have seen, not just in our discipline. But what I would say is that generally, when it comes to game dev education, my personal opinion is that one, that is a really good opportunity to create a space to experiment and try things and to hone down those fundamentals, where sometimes in a job, things are moving at a clip where you don't have that chance. So that's a good thing to do. I also think that like I have seen people do this job with a degree and be very successful, and some who didn't have a degree and were very successful. The thing that was shared between them is that they gave themselves the time to practice and learn, and they created a space of collaborators that they could engage with, get feedback from, and create playable experiences that they could show to potential employers. That is shared, I think, between both approaches.
I would also say that in regards to, is there a right major? Is there a right game to make? Should you be making certain types of games? Not really, because I did so much game stuff in college, and the way that I got my job now, 2 years after I graduated, hunting for a job for so long, was a film script that I wrote about queer coming of age sci-fi romance time travel stuff. It was like completely unrelated to games whatsoever, and they're like, well, we're making a game like that, so here we go. We should hire Isa. So it was like, I didn't like, it helped that I knew how to design games and I knew about choices and I had experience with Twine and I know all that stuff. But at the end it was like, did I know how to write a compelling story involving queer characters and romance and yearning and time travel? So yeah, it really doesn't have to be like a certain game you write, a certain kind of script you write. It just has to be writing, really.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to go back a little bit. Deandra, you said before that you look at student portfolios.
Yes.
Do you look at, like, are you in charge of interviews for your company, or?
I wouldn't say I'm in charge of them. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say that. But I'm involved in a lot of interviews for my company, and I help do interviews, and I've done that all throughout my career. So yeah, I have, and at GDC even, I usually sign up to be a GDCCA. So I love mentorship, and I love looking at, you know, junior portfolios and seeing where I can give advice, tell them things that help worked for me, you know, things that I've seen work for others, and things that I think are successful. And the clearest cut for what I think, well, I personally think is a successful portfolio is your resume clearly says something about your experience. And I don't care if it is even at Target, you relate it back to the job description somehow. It's, you know, things that I look for, especially in an associate, are you a good team player? Because we can always train you up to learn tools, to do writing, to be everything. But the thing that I find the most important is, are you a good collaborator? Do you know how to work with others? How do you deal with stressful situations with other people? How do you, you know, navigate that? And, you know, as long as the baseline, you have to have a baseline of writing. There has to be a certain line of like, okay, this is acceptable writing, but we can train you up for everything else. It's really, how good of a collaborator are you? And how much are you willing to, like, again, be creative, look at what experience you have and then relate it to what we're looking for. Because I always appreciate that. And just be, you know, just be somebody that's open to learning. Definitely open to learning always.
And I'm actually going to ask, since we're on the topic of portfolios, I saw that Liz and Issa, that you guys both have websites. Do you find that to be more helpful when applying for jobs in comparison to a writing portfolio, or what's your thoughts on that?
What do you mean in comparison to a writing portfolio?
Oh, I mean like a compilation of a bunch of your writing inserts on like
Gotcha.
maybe a folder or something like that.
I have both. So typically when applying to jobs, there's a place for a portfolio and there's a place to put your writing samples. And then some places will ask for 2 to 3 writing samples. Some will ask for 1, some will ask for 4. So I just kind of have a document that I split up where it's like, if they want all 4 of my samples, I'll send that one document. If they want separate ones, I'll send them separately. Most of the time, I've gotten feedback back on my individual samples, but having a portfolio and having your portfolio match your resume, so that if someone's looking at your portfolio, they can go see, oh, they worked on this game. Let me see what they did on this specific game on their resume, and vice versa. They can see it on your resume and go to find more or play the actual game itself on your portfolio. So I would say it's important to have samples, yes, and have those samples be on your website as well. But almost more importantly, have your resume and your portfolio match each other.
I do have a website. In all frank honesty, once you've experienced one layoff, you will do everything in your power to be prepared the next time, which is why I have that. So essentially that in a worst case scenario, which if you've kind of been doing this job long enough, you have seen, like I try to make sure that people can find me in more than one way. So they can, if some people see me through Twitter, or they see me through LinkedIn, or they see me through my website, and that there's multiple points of contact that make it easy for people to reach out to me for opportunities, or I can reach out to others and proliferate that. I personally do not put my portfolio samples on my website because I have dealt with plagiarism in the past, like people plagiarizing my work. So I don't do that anymore. It is definitely on request thing, or if I'm applying to an employer, that portfolio would go directly to the job application or recruiter that is requesting it. So that is how I personally handle it. But the website is there as kind of like a space to show kind of just like the bullet points of what I would generally do if someone wants to contact me. And, I have a very half-hearted blog that I have not updated in a very long time. So always with the good intentions that I can't like pay off of keeping it up, that exists there for my thoughts. But I do think that there's more than one approach to that. And it really depends on what you are trying to do also in the industry, I think, because I think that plays into it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I think I'll move on to, how does gameplay affect how you create a narrative experience for your games based on stuff that you've made in the past?
So I guess for everything that I've worked on, gameplay is incredibly important in telling the story. It's one doesn't dictate to the other, because that's how you will get that's how they'll get out of sync, and that's how it does the story in the game a great disservice. It's like I said, especially even right now on World of Warcraft, that's rude. She wants pats, I'm sorry. It's you work collaboratively and you work hand in hand. It's what story are we telling in this space? What does this space look like? What kinds of stories can we tell in this space? And what kind of game design, gameplay things can go in there? The quest designers are brilliant, and they can show you how like that space can be used for that. And then it's narrative's job to support that. So it's like, what story can we wrap around this and make it shine? And again, the quest designer has a lot of say in that as well, because they're also a very important part of that process. But it's the two of them working together, like, because again, there's the basic tools of your trade. Like everything that you make has some form of a kill quest, like go out and kill 6x, or like a collect quest, like go out and select 6x. But what is the narrative conceit that makes that seem special and different each time? And that's, again, you come up with it collaboratively with your quest partners and your design partners and your level design partners, the people that make that world, because sometimes you'll need their help to, tweak a space so that it's fit out correctly. It's, I'd say, a beautiful collaboration between all parts, where we all agree to a certain vision, and then we all go about executing that vision with our specific disciplines.
That what they said. It's really about working in tandem with all the different moving parts, and you can feel that when you're playing a game that the collaboration worked really, really well. You can feel when you can feel the design and gameplay and narrative in a puzzle or in a wordless section in a game with absolutely no dialogue whatsoever. You can feel that, and you can feel how they all work together when you're playing a game, that all the different moving parts are inspired by each other and working in harmony with each other. And you can also tell when people are having fun making the game that they're making. So yeah, it really is about collaboration. I couldn't have worded it better myself.
Yeah, I think that this is a question that comes up a lot because, I've gotten every permutation of the question of design or gameplay first, or what's more important and how do I work together? And, game dev is a contact sport, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, I can't, like, what is the point of me working on a game if I'm ignoring gameplay? Like, that does not help anybody. So, at the end of the day, the designers and myself, we're going to sit there and we all have the same goal, which is to make a great experience for the player. And we want to deliver that excellence, both in the way that the game feels and the way that the game delivers a story. So, I mean, people talk about ludonarrative dissonance, which is a really fancy way of saying that, like, hey, the game and the story aren't asking for the same things and the player can feel it. And so when I'm sitting down with my designers, like, I need to understand what their goals are and what they're trying to achieve. And I need to sit there and be like, okay, so these are the narrative goals that we've been given, and how can we achieve these goals together to create an experience that feels really, really good. So you should be in constant communication with your designers when you are working, and they should be in conversation with you, and you should be playtesting your work a lot. In order, because the game and the build, whatever you're making, it doesn't lie. Like when you sit there and you play the thing, it will tell you very quickly whether it's working or not, as you move through it. And so it's in everyone's best interest that the two disciplines work very closely together. It's imperative, otherwise you can't make a game. Like that would be awful. So yeah.
Yeah, I heard in the other panel that I asked if you could easily, like, ask somebody for an asset or something and talk about it with the other department. But I heard that that's actually not a good thing, and you were supposed to, like, go through a producer in order to do that. How does the collaboration work if you're being, like, while you're being supervised by a production department?
So that's interesting, because I've never really, I inform my producers, because, decisions get made when you talk to all the different disciplines. You'll be like, okay, we've made a plan, let's go forward. But the thing that I always do, I call it talking to my adult, which is my producer, and saying, hey, we have this plan to go forward and do this thing. And my producer, as my adult, will say, that sounds really cool. I'm going to check if there's, budget for it. I'm going to check to make sure that this isn't going to go too far out of scope so we can't do it. I'm going to tell you all the reasons that you can and cannot do this, and let's make a wise decision about it. But when it comes to talking to people, I've always been encouraged, and I always try to talk directly with people. But again, you keep everybody in the loop. So if you talk to somebody and you make a decision, you don't keep that to yourselves, you share with the class. tasks. So that way everybody's on the same page and nobody's confused, because it's really not that great if you're like, oh, me and like, say me and a quest designer decide to do this thing, and then suddenly level design's getting all these requests going, why are they changing all this stuff? It's, we came to a decision. What's the best way to get this decision heard by everybody else? Talk to a producer, because they are great at that communication with all the other departments' things, and they make everybody's lives easier and better because they are super great at that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's very much like, at least where I work, it's like, do we have this? Are we missing something? And then I talk to, I don't know, the art person. I'm like, hey, art person, it would be cool if we had this, don't you think? And usually they're like, yeah, it would be pretty cool if we have that. And then, yeah, we all just make a decision as a team. Like, do we really need this thing? I think we really need this thing. It's, yeah, just again, reinforcing it's communication. It's all about communication and collaboration.
The thought that I have is that the other panelists are right. Like, you know, you need to communicate. You shouldn't be leaving people out of the loop who do need to be in the loop. And there is a fine balance between not granting, that sounds so, but allowing autonomy to your devs who you have hired because they do know how to do the job that they are undertaking, and making sure that they can do that so that they can make good stuff for you. But at the same time, also knowing when is the proper time to check in. Because, for example, like my game director, Carrie, has an excellent talk about this that she gave at GDC, where she was talking about, like, if me and an artist or me and a designer decide to roll with an asset and create it unilaterally, we might end up creating a lot of work for other people that isn't accounted for in the production schedule or something else. And that is not a great scenario, because people get caught off guard, or they feel like decisions were made about their work that they had no say in, and that doesn't lend to a good environment on a team. So you really do have to be very conscious, and if you don't know what that relationship looks like when you join a studio or when you're working with a group, ask when, like, who are the people who should be involved in this conversation, and talking to your production people or whatever, and understand, where do you want me to roll and like do my thing and work with these other people and make these choices, and when do you need me to, you know, come to you and do these things. Now, that being said, I have never seen a project where this went 100% smoothly. It's not a pass, but I'm saying, like, you're going to hit these bumps in the road where there's going to come a time where you went, oops, I thought I designed or wrote this very simple thing that turns out is not so simple. Like, no way to do that. So you do the best you can to keep people roped in, with the understanding that everyone understands, as you do, how people are supposed to be roped in.
All right. Honestly, I'll just let the audience know now. If you have any questions, type them into Twitch or in the Discord, and I'll be taking them as they come in. And I think I already got the portfolio one that I saw on Twitch. But I wanted to ask, for those who would be able to answer this, how would you compare working on indie games or for smaller game companies and writing for larger companies?
In my career, I feel like when you're writing for smaller, or you're just working in a smaller company, it's just, you have to wear a lot more hats, if you will. So, you know, you're not just the narrative person, you might also be the localization person. You might also be like kind of a producer doing things. It's just, you have to fulfill multiple roles, because you just don't have the size and the disciplinary split like that. So it does breed for, again, a smaller team, really tightly knit. You all do a wide variety of stuff, and you get to touch a lot of different parts of game dev, which is really great. But there is something also nice kind of in AAA, where when you're hired to do a thing, that's the thing you do. And you can actually just not worry about that other end of stuff, because you know that other professionals are taking care of it. So it's to your taste, I guess, for whichever you like better. But yeah, it's slightly more, a little more work and responsibility in multiple zones, or just really focusing on your discipline is the way that it is in my head.
Yeah, I would say like working on indie can feel very freeing, but then also too freeing at times because it's like, oh my God, I'm doing so much. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it is kind of nice working at a place where, again, reiterating what the panelists said, like everyone has their own spot. You don't have to worry about how this person's doing this or how this person's doing that because we're all great and awesome and we got hired for a reason. Whereas with indie, sometimes indie takes so long because you don't have resources usually, and if you're looking for funding, most places looking for to give funding out want a vertical slice or like a decent demo of your game, and that can take a really long time. It can take a couple of months or it could take a year, and doing all that unpaid labor isn't super fun, or sometimes you might not have the free time to do it. Sometimes people will have to drop because they need to work 2 or 3 retail jobs at a time to survive, or someone gets picked up by a game studio and can't really work on it that much anymore aside from 1 or 2 days a month. There's a lot more like permutations that come with working in indie rather than working at a more organized production studio or place. Maybe place isn't the right word, but
Well, I feel like this is a two-part question. On the writing end, right? Like just the narrative design end and the writing end. When I'm working in indie, oftentimes I feel like it's a little bit more scrappy in terms of defining what the tools, software, what we're actually using to write dialogue, create stories, integrate with the designers, other things like that. And sometimes they have a set process and sometimes they don't. If I'm dipping into a AAA company, chances are they have a set of tools. They have a much more set way in which they want me to approach things when I sit down to do the tasks that they're asking me to do, or to participate in the experience. So in that way, I think there's that consideration to make. But the actual job of sitting down to write a thing at the end of the day, first, you always have some sense of existential dread when you have to write anything. And then once you get over it, you still got to write the thing. So there's that. In terms of like the experience of like, how do you as a narrative designer or a game writer fit into the larger studio system, whether that's indie or AAA? When I'm working with indie, there's definitely, I feel like more of a sense of precariousness and survival, where, they care very much about their product, just as much as AAA people do too, if I'm being quite honest. But also there is a lot more freedom to, I think, create like the idea that lives in someone's brain. But I do think that in AAA, like I definitely have a much more specialized role when I'm sitting in a studio, almost always, where that is not only that, but I'm working often within a department at a AAA studio. Whereas oftentimes in indie, I am lucky if there is another person who cares about narrative. I'm usually it. So I think that that's the difference, is just kind of like what is the network or support system, and that has pros and cons. But I do think on a lot of levels, we try to talk about the differences between indie and AAA a lot, and there are, but they're actually far more similar, in my opinion, than people give it credit for.
All right, we've got an audience question. So what are some of the resources that help with narrative design and game writing? Both in terms of literature and tools. I think they're referring to something like Twine or Ink.
I would say definitely, like you mentioned it, Twine. There's a lot of benefit to building a Twine game and learning how interactive dialogue works. Interactive, sorry. It's a great simple tool. Like everybody has a web browser, so it's not like you're doing a huge money investment. It's just really your time and effort. So that's kind of my hot tip for anybody that's like, I need to put a portfolio piece on here, but I don't have any game specific writing. I'm like, make something in Twine. Make a choose your own adventure in Twine. And that will tell me a bunch about how you think narratively and what you think is a cool puzzle to go through when you're going through a story. So I'm a huge fan of that. I actually have not read many game narrative books. I'm dirt old, so I've been working at this for a while. So I know that there are some out there and like some really good ones, and I should, because I should always be getting better at my job. And I'm sure there are many, many fine resources that these people can tell me about, which I hope, because I will absolutely do that. But yeah, at the very baseline, just do the thing in the simplest, easiest way possible to show us that you're doing the thing.
One specific tool that I can now promote is Storyloom. I've been told from my peers that any students who want a closed beta access key to Storyloom can reach out to me and I can get you a link to it. Storyloom we're looking to be like the easiest way to make a visual novel ever. It's also browser based, and it's drag and drop coding. You don't even have to input any like coding at all. You just drag blocks and then you just write. Definitely we'd love to share this tool with students. We want it to be a great educational tool, and we have some educational stuff in our FAQ about how to make choices, and we write blog posts about like how to make your choices even better, or how to tackle different themes, and interviewing different writers on the platform. So yeah, we are like super excited to get some people in here testing out our new program. But I can't also recommend Twine enough. I love Twine. Twine is awesome. Twine's how I started making games, as well as RenPy or RenP. I know the Pi stands for Python, but for me it always sounds more natural to say RenP. That is more like I'm typing code out because you're learning Python. But yeah, Twine and hopefully Storyloom will be on your radar. But definitely those are the ones that I've used and recommend.
I think that in terms of tools, it depends on what your goal is. So if you are doing game writing, of course, Twine is great. It's also really great for prototyping and different things like that in that way. But there's also a whole raft of free tools. And if you are just getting started, it is okay to experiment and dip into these different tools like Ink, Artisty Draft, Arcweave, Yarn Spinner, all these others. There's no hard and fast one, I would say. And if they're free, then there's an opportunity to try them and to see kind of the guts of how they work, I think is really, really important. Being able to, but I don't think there is like one golden tool, in my opinion. I don't think that exists. But I do think depending on the types of projects you're trying to do or the type of portfolio you're trying to build, those different tools can do different things. Now, if you're trying to be a narrative designer in a very technical sense, someone who works with stories, maybe does write dialogue, but does the more technical end of the job, then I would recommend that you start to get familiar with different engines and editors and understanding how you plug story elements into those engines on the back end. Unity and Unreal are often very obviously like engine defaults in our industry that we refer to, and understanding how those work, I think that is very important. And having just even a base familiarity sometimes with the tools of the disciplines that are definitely going to touch yours use also can really help to understand the conversations that they are trying to have with you. So that is maybe not the first priority, like looking at their stuff, but it does help you on the job. The more you understand about what they are dealing with and their work and how it impacts them and the decisions you make, the better you can do your job. Yeah.
All right, I have another audience question, and this one is a bit long, so bear with me. I'm going to quote it like word by word because it's specific. Is there such a thing as having too much in your portfolio between bark sheets, dialogue, branching narratives, and everything else? I've started to worry that my portfolio page is getting a bit cluttered, trying to prove that I can do the things that all these different applications are asking for. I've taken to creating separate landing pages with each application with 2 to 3 specific samples, but could having a lengthy public-facing portfolio be problematic from a hiring perspective?
I think that there is a such thing as information overload when it comes to your portfolio. I would say, there's a lot of different things that were mentioned there. So I'd say if you wanted to choose particularly one, like something that you're super, super proud of and your one best example of that, and have that there, and maybe just keep it to like, things that we all look for, I guess. Like if you want to have one example of barks and one example of like an interactive story, and maybe one example of something else that you feel really great about, that seems fine. But yeah, I think 2 to 3 samples of each can get a lot, unless that's just, the majority of what you've done. And then maybe putting 2 up there is okay. But yeah, there is a such thing as a little bit information overload, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I agree. Some advice that I got from doing a portfolio review a while ago with Sweet Baby, who are awesome and give out free portfolio reviews. So definitely look them up. They're awesome. Some advice they gave me is to write a quest document, essentially write a fan fiction quest for a game that you really like, because that'll show a lot of different disciplines in game writing, from writing barks to writing quest descriptions to writing item descriptions to writing dialogue. And if you can condense that quest into just a couple of pages and make it super short, but show all these different disciplines that come with game writing and narrative design, that's also really awesome. But I also have, I'm a little weird with my portfolio. I have a reel on my portfolio, which is more of like an animation thing. But since I've primarily worked in visual novels, I have like just a reel that's a gallery of a bunch of different lines that I wrote that I really like. And it has the visuals from the game in it because it's a visual novel. And that's like a quick way to see like my writing style, as well as the different genres of writing that I do, and the different like genres of games that I've written for. So I always tell people, when it comes to portfolio reviews, they want to be able to see as much of you in as little clicks or as little reads as possible, so that they can really grab and get that gist of who you are as a writer and what your writing style and voice is, because you might be a great writer, and I'm sure everyone watching is an amazing, incredible writer, but it really just kind of depends on the project people are hiring for. Like, if you're a horror writer, you're probably not going to get hired for a children's game for a children's educational game. So it really is kind of like, waiting for someone that's looking for exactly what you do and what you're great at.
So total honesty, like, I feel this question because, like, I have a folder, on my computer that is just full of different portfolio samples that studios have asked of me, like everything under the sun, and so it starts to look absurd when you look at it sometimes. But what you do and eventually do is you have like a little library that when studios ask for a specific thing, then you can pull it. And oftentimes I do have to modify them because they might have a specific request with that thing that they want. And so what happens is that, like, if a job description or the recruiting staff or the team that you're interviewing with is asking for specific samples on the portfolio, that's what you give them. Like, that's what they have asked for, so that's what you need to deliver. If they leave it free form, right, then I will usually go in the realm of 2 to 3, 4 if I feel like there's something that the studio ought to see that fits their project in a unique way. And I try to hit different things. One, a sample that shows my writing, that I can write, that I understand story and can grasp it. Another sample that will show that I understand how to work within writing in a game, considering design. Probably in that sample, I will have something that shows, hey, I collaborated with the different people in creating this sample, and here are the considerations we made and the iterations I made. And I try to show a sample, if it's free form again, where I was like, hey, I wrote this, got feedback, and then here's how I changed that draft, so they can see what iteration and how I take feedback. I think that that's a very important part of what employers are looking for, is, can you communicate in those ways and take feedback and give feedback? The last part is actually similar to what others have said, is if I do, I will include videos of, like, if there was a mission that I wrote or a dialogue, I'll just throw it up on YouTube and I will provide a link to it, or I'll embed it and I'll say here. But when you're starting out, sometimes you don't have those. And that's okay. I will say that, like, if there's a very small interactive experience you have created, I take the time to play them for my applicants. Not everyone can and has the time to do that. But if I see on a resume or in a portfolio, hey, I created a 10, 15-minute experience, I'm going to like pop into that on Steam and I am going to download it and play it to get a good look. So that is something that I will include if I have the means to do that.
Thank you. That was actually very informative. And it seems like we're getting pretty close to time. So right before we finish off, would you be comfortable with letting the audience know your socials or a way to contact you if they have any more questions in the future? Or if you want to do a promo, you can do the promo now.
Sure. So you can find me at most places with at Masana Sadai, MESAANA SEDAI, because I am a huge Wheel of Time fan and have been since I was 14 years old. So that has been me on the internet for many, many years. Also, because the other one deserves to be introduced as well. This is Serafina Pekala, counterpart to Larry Silvertongue you saw beforehand. She is also a very good narrative cat. That's her promo. That's all the promos I got for you. I'm not fancy. I do not have a website. I should probably get started on it. But when I do, I'm sure you'll find it at my Twitter profile, or you can hit me up on Instagram because I am there posting all sorts of pictures of things.
I'm at Issa Party on everything, but without the A in party because someone on Twitter that hasn't tweeted in 10 years took it from me. And I've been trying to get at Issa Party for so long.
How dare they?
I know, really, they should know. And in Pride Month, you would think. So no, it's at ISAPRTY, all _. And if you're interested in getting a golden ticket invite for Storyloom, if you want to play around in it, feel free to email me at my work email, which is just isa@pixelberrystudios.com.
You can find me on Twitter at The Right Game, WRITE, and on LinkedIn, or as we talked, if you want to email my website, you can do that too. But I'm trying to think, is there anything to promote? I suppose just the projects that I've worked on that are coming up. Curse to Golf is being released later this year, and if you are into golf and physics-based golf likes is what we're calling it, then give it a whirl. And later Singularity will be coming out on shelves, and to give that a playthrough, and would love to hear what you all think. But thank you for inviting us to the panel. We do appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And actually, I realized my LinkedIn is actually my name. So it's Deandra Lazarado there, but everything else is Masana Sadai. I apologize, but it was great. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I actually don't think we're going yet.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, okay. Oh, we have 8 minutes.
I thought we were supposed to go soon because technically it's 50 minutes. But I asked, I'll probably message again, but while we're waiting to see when we're supposed to leave, you guys want to talk a bit more about what kind of games you're working on? Or give us details if you want to.
So currently I'm working on World of Warcraft, and we did announce that we're making Dragonflight. So I'm just kind of all immersed in all things dragon and dragony and dragonish, if you will. It's kind of exciting. It feels really good to be working on this expansion as it does to work at all at WoW, which is an amazing experience. I feel very strongly about the team that I work on in the sense that they are really diverse, talented, intelligent, amazing individuals, and the passion and creativity that I see every day in my job and the sheer love for the game is just really inspiring, and it makes me really happy to kind of get up and do my job. It's nice to go into an environment where everybody puts in so much love and so much talent, and you are all really working together to make this one beautiful thing.
I can't talk too much about my project because it's in closed beta, but I can say it's really cool, and I love it, and I love our team so much. We're super dedicated, and like I was between working on this project and working somewhere else, and just kind of the sheer love that the Storyloom team has for this project really drew me to it, and I am now part of that love. And also, I guess just kind of like shout out to all of my game development friends that got me here, like Preston and Sasha and Amberly and all the cool people on the Oxrat team. But yeah, can't talk too much, but again, if you want to play around in Storyloom, let me know. But yeah.
All right, that seems like it's it. So thank you, Issa, Liz, and Deandra for answering all our questions. And thank you guys for watching.